Good afternoon. So Martin, we have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Short time for grilling you, but I will try my best.
You do a good job usually.
Yeah,
You've grilled me in less than 20 minutes many times.
Let me start. What is the one topic you don't want me to ask you about?
England's performance in Australia playing cricket, which nobody in the audience will know, least of all you, what the hell I'm talking about.
Where is Australia?
So it's that's lessons in geography too. But England were disastrous in the Ashes series. You want to learn about the Ashes series?
The Ashes series?
I don't think we go that way. You see, it's exactly what
I was asked by the Israeli journalist what I think about Leo Messi. So I asked him, what is Leo Messi? He told me Leo Messi is a combination of Twitter and Instagram. I said, that sounded a great idea. Where can you invest? You have 200,000 people.
Yes.
You wake up every morning with the terrific thought that you have to feed all of them.
No, I don't worry about feeding them. I'm proud of the fact that if you add it all up, I guess on the basis that each family unit probably would average about 3 people. That's 600,000 people or so
all over the world
depend for their livelihood on WPP. I mean, I think that's, so, it's a strange way in a way to talk about the company, but I take that obligation and that opportunity very seriously. So I think that's the key. People don't usually necessarily measure success of a company in terms of the number of people they employ or dependents or whatever, but I think that's probably one of the most important.
I think it's very important to create jobs.
Yeah.
How do you see the
particularly at this point in time, and we'll get into this maybe. I learned for the first time 10 seconds before we came up here that the subject of our panel, and it's not a panel, it's a conversation, was the future of media. But we'll come to it. But one of the biggest issues is employment. I think the previous panel talked about a little bit about the implications of it, and there are optimists and pessimists about it. I happen to be in the pessimistic camp in terms of the impact of advancing technology on jobs and the prospects of jobs. So, well, but so the 600,000, 200,000 thing is important in the context. No, I do worry about that, and I do think, I mean, this is not a new concept. If you had to struggle with economics, which I did when I was an undergraduate, and if you had to struggle with the general theory, Maynard Keynes' work in 1929, he touches on this point too, or more than touches on it, and he forecast that people were going to have more leisure time. That was the solution. We'd have more holidays. Well, wrong. That may be that in 2017 or 18, that's a more relevant comment or a more relevant explanation of what's going to happen. But my fear is that as we're starting to see, or have started to see in the last couple of years, whether we're talking about Brexit, whether we're talking about Catalonia, whether we're talking about what's happened here in the United States in the presidential election, all of which were a surprise certainly to the so-called elites. We're on the cusp of another event at Davos in 10 days' time where the president of the United States will be with a significant delegation apparently from the US, which is contrarian thinking.
Will they keep your room in the Belvedere?
Sorry?
Will they keep your room in the Belvedere, or you will be evacuated?
Well, we never go to the Belvedere, but we'll be there. But it's interesting. I mean, people say to me they're surprised that President Trump would go to Davos. I think actually it's a brilliant contrarian move on his part. I mean, the last place that you would have thought that a year or so ago that he would be. But you had Xi there last year filling the vacuum that there was no US president there, no significant US delegation. This year, Trump will be there apparently with a very significant delegation, and he'll fill that vacuum. And it's a brilliant media move on his part, yet again, because whatever your views on Trump, you can't argue that he's a master of management of news media, whatever you want, primarily through Twitter feeds. But it will be another opportunity for him to seize the agenda. So, but when one looks at what's happening from a populist point of view, one of the reasons for the rise of populism and the development of it, particularly in the last few years, is this issue about the impact of technology. There isn't enough retraining. The educational system is not geared to retraining people in the sophisticated way they're going to have to be retrained when technological development is moving at the pace that it is.
Speaking about the future of media,
yeah.
What is your take of what you see here in CES on the future of media?
Well, I often wonder, and the people in this room, and maybe they come here. I've been probably coming to CES, I guess it's for about the last 5 or 6 years. I didn't used to come. It's now probably rather like Cannes, rather like our advertising festival in Cannes. It's become very large. It's become very crowded. There are signs of some creaking at the edges, power failures, inability. I mean, I thought it was quite amusing that rain and weather would bring an advanced technology conference almost to a halt. But 180,000 people, I can't think of any other city in the world that would be able to accommodate. Maybe there are several cities in China that could do it, for example, but 180,000 people in one place at one time. But putting that to one side of the minute, I often think about the CMOs, the CTOs, the CEOs that visit, our clients that visit here. What do they go away from CES thinking? And I think probably they end up being more confused as a result of coming here and spending even the full amount of time trying to absorb it. I mean, it is spread out and very difficult to absorb in a meaningful way. And the same thing applies to me and I guess the people inside our company. I mean, it's extremely complex and extremely difficult to understand. Now, if I look at the media spaces for a minute, the thing that people are absorbed by, and it's worth, if I look at our media book, which is a $75 billion media book, where are we now spending, investing on behalf of our clients and with our clients, that media book? $5 billion goes to Google. That's as of the end of last year. About $3 billion goes to Disney Fox. The new, that hasn't happened yet, but that's the new strong number 2. About $2 billion goes to Facebook. So those are the top 3. If you went back 4 or 5 years ago, that neither Google nor Facebook were anywhere near the top. The other major traditional media owners are in the $750 to $2 billion range, $1.75 billion range. But beyond Facebook and Google, even if you look at Oath on a consolidated basis with Verizon and Microsoft, et cetera, really, and Snap and Twitter and LinkedIn and everybody else, the comparison, is they're sort of pimples or flies on the elephant backside in relation to the big 2, often referred to as a duopoly. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it, and you see it very much here, and we're exposed to it again today, is the rise of Amazon. I mean, a lot of our clients, and indeed our competitors and ourselves, would say they want more balance in the digital marketplace. The Google and Facebook control, in inverted commas, 75% of digital, which in turn is about 30% of the worldwide market. It's a $1 trillion industry. About 30% of it is digital now. 75% of that is at Google and Facebook. So they control about 20%, a little over 20% of the worldwide marketplace. So that's one thing. The challenger brand is Amazon. And it's Amazon really, I think, going head-to-head with Google. There will be some, obviously, competition for Facebook too. But on search and on advertising, Amazon is increasingly building a strong position. If you think about Amazon in terms of search, Kantar, which is our data company, has a statistic: 55% of product searches here in the United States emanate in some way or another from Amazon already. That's one thing. The second thing is they are building an advertising platform. Now, Google's advertising revenues are about $100 billion. Facebook's $40 billion. Amazon, we don't know the figure. They're very reticent and shy to give a number, but I would say something around $2.5 billion. So they're already. We spent last year with Amazon $200 million. This year we think we will spend $300 million. So it's going up at a fairly rapid rate, but it's in the foothills still. But they are coming, and they're coming big time. Their people are very strong. They're extremely well organized. And they pose a very interesting question for our clients. Because you get volume gains, obviously, because e-commerce and online and direct is becoming more and more important. But on the other hand, you lose more control. There's a reticence amongst Google and Facebook to distribute their data to us and others as effectively as the traditional media companies have done. Amazon is even more reticent to share the data. So the trade-off here is you get more initial volume, short-term volume, but do you surrender control in the long term? So when you ask me about CES, I tend to think about it in those terms. And actually, CES for us is an opportunity to see AI, VR, robotics, computer power, screens, and everything else.
Alexa,
but the fundamental thing for us at CES is to understand or try and understand what is happening to media. So we see all the media owners here that we have partnerships with, and to try and get an understanding about how media is moving.
So if you compare it to Cannes, you actually believe that CES, which is a proxy for the equipment manufacturers, is becoming more and more an advertising platform.
Well, you know, if you went back 5 or 6 years' time, I think ago, I think the organizers of CES were very conscious that it didn't have enough of a platform, a halo to attract. And I don't know what the attendances have been, but I mean, in the years I've been coming, or what they were 5 years ago, but in the years I've been coming, the escalation in the audience and the variety of the audience has been very significant. To the extent, you know, when I walk around the show, I mean, one of the things I think that, you know, funny, it may be a strange observation to make, but you maybe not so, because if you look at a higher or a high sense, you see it. You see the rise of China from a technology point of view. I mean, I think it's reasonable to say that people in the West do not want China to succeed.
You know, do you think it will help them?
Yes. I mean, China for us, Greater China, which includes Taiwan and Hong Kong, is our third largest market. So our biggest market is the United States, which is about 6 billion out of our 20 billion of revenue. The UK is about 3, largely of historical reasons, but we have a big market share there. That's where we started. Number 3 is Greater China, which is about 1.7 billion. We have about 16,000 people there.
How much you spend with Tencent and with Baidu?
Well, Alibaba would be the top two. Baidu would be another one. You know, BAT is the one, is the acronym that we use for them. I mean, we spend a significant sum. Our billings in China are probably, I'm going to say, around $6 billion. We have 15% of the market. We're the largest agency group in China, taking into the other activities like data and everything else that we do there. We have a very significant market share, but the answer to your question is not enough in relation to Alibaba and Tencent, and it is going to grow. But the point I was going to make is this. You know, Scott Spirit, who's here with me and is our strategy officer and digital officer, chief digital officer based in Singapore. We carve out about 2 weeks of our agenda every 2 years to go and see Chinese companies on their home territory. And we did that about 3 months ago. We went and saw 31 companies in, I think it was 10 days, in various parts of China. And not just the coastal plain, but into the hinterland to Chengdu, Chongqing, and other places. And the remarkable thing is the growth and rise of Chinese technology. If I look at our visit 4 years ago, or 2 years ago, as opposed to our visit last year, or this year, it is a remarkably different situation in the sophistication of the technological development. You look at a company like JDI in drones, you go to the Huawei campus, you see a campus of 50,000 people in Shenzhen. The Alibaba campus is 15,000 people in Hangzhou, but at Shenzhen it's 50,000, they have 200,000 people as well. It's a remarkable achievement, and we underestimate the growth and development of Chinese technology. And you see it here. You see Hisense and Haier who have bought parts of Western corporations.
They keep buying.
And keep buying. You know, Foxconn is another good example of, you know, having bought Sharp and developing the Sharp brand. But it goes, and then you look at actually the people who come here, very interesting, very strong Asian contingent here, very strong Chinese contingent here, and it's a reminder to me that that is, you know, we mustn't become too self-satisfied or too complacent, because growth and development is going to be very significant.
And you say that the West is not keen about their success.
Well, you know, it's sort of neighborhood envy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it was not so much neighborhood envy. I mean, it is, look, it's a G2 world. If I look at WPP, you know, 8 billion out of the 20, 6 in the US and almost 2 in China come from the G2. If I look at it GDP-wise, the world is what, 72 trillion, 73 trillion of GDP. US is 20 almost. China is 10. You know, China will surpass the US. If China continues to grow at 6.5, and even if the US grows faster than 2, which I think it will. I mean, whatever you think of the president and certain parts of his policies, be absolutely assured, my view, that his policy on tax, his policy on regulation, and what is to come on infrastructure spending will stimulate the US economy, and has done already, you know, much to his critics' chagrin. You know, I was just reading a review of Michael Wolff's book, and, you know, good big...
Aren't you glad that you are not the president?
Sorry?
Aren't you glad that you are not the president of the United States?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people running for presidency of the United States now, or potentially running it, that you wouldn't have thought a few years ago. A lot of people have, you know, thrown their name into the ring or into the hat, thinking about it. So, I mean, the sort of the constituency of people who think they could be president. Wasn't it Kanye West who said at the MTV festival a few years ago that he was going to run? So you have the prospect of Kim Kardashian being the first lady. If it's changed a lot, and the US is a sort of a unique example of it. But whatever you think about him and his policies, those three things, tax, infrastructure spending, and reduction of regulation, create a totally different business atmosphere to what I witnessed under the Obama administration. I'm a foreigner and probably can say these sort of things. But, you know, as a member of the Business Council or the Business Roundtable, the atmosphere was very different under Obama for the 8 years than it is now under Trump. The degree of optimism, and that's, I think, quite positive. You look at some of the things that have been happening in the last 24, 48 hours, you know, whether it be minimum wage, the sort of statements that you're seeing, in the case of Walmart, whether it be the sort of statements that CEOs are making about what they see post a reduction in the tax rate to 21%. You know, what Warren Buffett said yesterday on Squawk Box with Charlie Munger, which was really interesting when you listen to what they said. I mean, and the way it was put. I mean, effectively, the government now has reduced its partnership in any company, as Buffett said, from 35% to 21%. So it's a 40% hike in after-tax earnings at no cost. So there are some very significant changes taking place. And what was really interesting, I thought, was what Charlie Munger said. I mean, he disagreed with Buffett, said he wouldn't have introduced that tax bill, although he did say on behalf of Berkshire Hathaway's shareholders he would have voted for it. Munger said he would have done it too, but he actually said he thinks that the tax policy may have more of a positive impact than Buffett implied, which I think is interesting in and of itself. You see it in the markets. And to give him his credit as well, what's happened in North Korea in the last few days, and the fact that North Korean athletes are going to participate in the Korean Games, you know, I think is another, you've got to give the man credit. He took a hard line on sanctions and on North Korea, pushed the Chinese. A lot of people thought that wasn't going to work. It seems that that's starting to work in terms of bringing negotiation, at least in relation
to
the biggest. Well, I'm a pessimist on the impact of technology. You know, it's 2018, we have synchronous growth, as the analysts call it. We have various parts of the world growing slowly, but growing in a synchronous way, 3 to 4% nominal GDP growth. You know, if I look at the US, I'm bullish on the US. If I look at Latin America, I was in Uruguay on holiday over Christmas and the New Year. I mean, Brazil is much more positive. Argentina is much more positive. Peru, Colombia, Mexico, question marks over the election. You
what
go to
about India? You don't mention India.
Well, I was just talking about US and Latin America. So UK, some challenges because of Brexit, but still a strong economy with actually companies investing in marketing spend. Is sort of counterintuitive. Because of the uncertainty, you would expect them to be much more cautious. What they're not spending on is fixed capital investment. You know, the Bank of England and others are seeing a resistance and a delay in investment, but we're seeing companies invest in brand because I think they're trying to tickle up the top line in uncertain terms. Germany strong, France improving under Macron. Italy's got an election coming up, a bit of uncertainty there. Spain, despite the Catalan issues, actually probably improving. Eastern Europe, a bit more mixed. Russia, currency is the issue there, although it's a self-contained economy in Russia, actually the underlying economy is not doing so badly. China, probably getting stronger. India, to your point, bedeviled a little bit by the GST, the sales tax, and by monetization, or demonetization, but inherently strong. Markets like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, strong. Australia, New Zealand, a bit mixed. Japan's showing a little bit of strength. So you go around the world. Africa, changes politically in Africa, in Zimbabwe and South Africa, all positive, I think. So potentially some interesting things going on in the continent of Africa as well. So generally, you know, you feel a little bit better. 3 things happening: Olympic Games, World Cup in Russia, and then the midterm congressionals here in the US, which stimulate ad spending, tighten up the media markets. Doesn't directly affect agencies because they tend not to get involved in those campaigns, but helpful.
Last question. I see the sign is already up.
They're trying to drag us off the stage.
Yeah, but I need to ask you one question. 2 months ago, I asked you if you still talk to your father, and you told me yes.
Yes, I do.
So now I want to know if you still talk to your mother, and if yes,
well,
what about?
my mother and my father, who are no longer with us, at least physically, but in spirit they are. So the answer is
so
yes.
What your mother tell you when she look what you accomplished?
Well, she'll be very disappointed because in the introduction I was described as one of. So as any Jewish mother would say, is my little bubbler is not one of. So anyway, do it. I'm sure she's is supportive. I wasn't an only child. I had a brother who died at birth 1 year before, but I was effectively the only child of a Jewish family in North London, and my mother used to wrap everything up in plastic. And it's an amazing to this day that she didn't wrap me up in plastic.
Okay, so Martin, thank you very much. Like always, it was great.
Thank you, Yossi. Thank you.